Hello, everyone, and welcome back to What After Dentistry. Now, in recent years, we have seen how dentistry has grown, it has evolved, and even patients now they are more aware and they demand quality care. If you still aren't sure how dentistry has evolved in the last 2 decades, then do check out our previous video on this topic. I will link it in the description box below and also in the I button on the top. Now, coming to today's video topic, why did I mention about dental evolution is the fact that now we have few super specialization fields also where dental professionals are working, they are pitching into, and they are doing an excellent job. One such field that we are going to discuss today is head and neck oncology after MDS in oral and maxillofacial surgery. So, to discuss this topic today, we have with us Dr. Priyanka Raina, who is currently working as a head and neck reconstructive surgery consultant and is associated with Head and Neck Surgical Oncology Department of Artemis Hospital, Gurugram. She completed her dental education from BGS Dental College, Hospital and Research Institute, Ludhiana. After completing her BDS, she practiced dentistry for a span of 1 year and then pursued her post graduation in oral and maxillofacial surgery from SGR Dental College, Hospital and Research Institute. After her post graduation, she worked as a trainee in Tata Memorial Cancer Hospital, Mumbai, and then pursued a fellowship in head and neck oncosurgery from Astha HCG Cancer Center, Ahmedabad. She has also completed her clinical fellowship in microvascular reconstructive surgery from Changgung Memorial Hospital, Taiwan. And since then, she has been working as an surgery consultant in various cities like Mumbai and Delhi. She comes up with an experience of 6 years and ensures quality care is delivered to all her patients. So let's see what she has to say about this amazing and super specialization field of head and neck oncology.
Hi, Dr. Priyanka. Welcome you to our initiative, What After Dentistry, to talk about the scope and opportunities as a head and neck oncologist after MDS in OMFS. So, we welcome you, and it's a pleasure to have you on our channel today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shireen. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, before we get into the formal discussion about this particular field, we would like to know that how did you generate your interest towards this field?
My journey towards head and neck oncology developed just like as any other MDS student. When we are in MDS, maxillofacial, we have postings in cancer centers. So I did my MDS from Bangalore. There I had my posting in Kidwai Cancer Center as well as in Narayana. And it was totally life-changing experience for me because I experienced that from dental background, I have so many options to explore, and that too in surgical field. There I met Dr. Moni Kurikos sir, which gave me a new idea, new vision that being from this field will not limit my scope towards my future or my career. And so initially also when I got into this BDS, before as any other student I wanted to do MBBS, but when as I had interest in surgical field, but then when I entered BDS I thought what to do next. Then I explored MDS maxillofacial surgery option. Yes, I can do surgery, I was confident. Then I thought, oh yes, I can do cancer, I can just experience myself in the field of cancer oncology, and this gave me a direction. Then it was since then I developed interest in this field.
I think that's amazing, and it's a very it's great to see women pursuing surgery fields. Very few women we find pursuing surgeries, whether they do MBBS or even BDS. They stick to more on the other part of dentistry, but surgery is one field which where we have very less female surgeons in our country. So I think that's amazing. And then on top of that, going for the super specialization field of head and neck, I think that's head and neck oncologist. I think that's great. So, we have heard about various fellowships in this particular field. If somebody wants to become a head and neck oncologist, can you suggest of some good fellowship programs that are being, there in our country currently?
Yeah, so when I started my journey towards this field, at that time there were not many options as our field was not recognized per se in the field of oncology, surgical oncology. But now, at present, there are a lot many options for the students. I would say, like first I would start with the FHNO fellowship, which is a All India Fellowship for Surgical Oncology, head and neck surgical oncology, in which almost all the main hospitals of India give the fellowship under that title, FHNO. And then other is Tata Memorial Cancer Center. There is one exam which takes place there, under in which they take the maxillofacial surgeons. So in that you have to give the entrance test, MCQ test, and followed by the interview. Third, there are separate institutional based exams as well, like HCG Ahmedabad. Now it's under FHN only, but like Guwahati, there are many centers like that which take separate exams for the fellowships and they provide fellowship. The main is FHNO and TMH,
Okay.
which I am.
Okay. And do we have any kind of entrance exam? Like for Tata Memorial, you mentioned that there is an entrance exam, but for FHNO, is there any entrance exam also if one wants to get into?
Yes, every year there is an exam held by the FHNO body, which is mainly for the Indian students. And in that, even general surgery, post ENT, post maxillofacial can appear for that. It's better always to have some observership experience before, just immediately after passing out from the MDS. It becomes little difficult for you to clear this exam because you are not so much aware or exposed in this field. So it's always better to take 1 or 2 months of the observership in some of the good cancer centers and go ahead with the exams through fellowship for fellowship in FHNO and all that.
I think, okay. So, and the course, I mean, the questions that are there for the entrance exam, are there proper coaching centers for preparation of these kind of exams, or how is it?
So, whatever these exams are, like mainly FHNO or TMH, whatever I mentioned, all the things pertaining to head and neck oncology, surgical oncology. See, when our curriculum in MDS surgery also, MDS maxillofacial surgery also, we have a particular part, a big part. I mean, it's a major question which comes from the head and neck surgical oncology, surgery part, oncology part. So that in a little bit expansive form, we have to go ahead and read. Like there are books, Jatin Shastel and Maran, all these things you can go and go through them and appear for the exam, latest articles and all those things. And then you can sit for the exam. And once when you go for, as I mentioned, go for observership in some good center, before that, 1 or 2 months observership, obviously you tend to discuss with your colleagues and all that there, that if you are appearing for the exam, what can we go through and what material should we read, and also that the experience what we get, you get to know these things.
I think yes, that's very correctly said. So now, once if somebody pursues this field and they complete their fellowship in this particular field, how should they kickstart their career? Because this is a very super specialized field, and this would not be a very, not every hospital will have a department for head and neck oncology. So how should they start their career?
First thing, what I would say, that if we are talking about particularly taking your career towards only and only head and neck surgical oncology is one thing. Second thing is when some maxillofacial surgeon decides that yes, he or she is going to practice head and neck surgical oncology as well, along with the maxillofacial things. So, if we talk separately about and particularly about head and neck surgical oncology, first, it is always better to start your career after the fellowship with some institute based practice. Why I am saying this? Because in initial days of our career, we need a back support. I mean, what I mean by back support is one, the patient input, second, the good ICU team, Because even if we are doing the private practice or an individual practice, it is very important that you should have a very strong ICU team. It's a field where we encounter a lot of complications. So we should have always the ICU team should be looked upon. So that's why I'm saying institution. And next thing, oncology is something which is a multimodality field. So we need radiation also, we need chemo also, we need all this. So initially, if you are just starting your practice and you are around these people, you get your cases to the tumor board and discuss it well, it gives you a right direction actually, not to go anywhere medical legally wrong or something like that. So it helps you channelize your career. And once you gain enough experience through the institution, you can just move it for your individual practice.
Okay. I think that's fair enough. And now, if somebody wants to work as a on the non-surgical side of head and neck oncology, so how should they start? And is the same kind of course they will be also doing if they want to practice non-surgical side of head and neck oncology?
So when we say non-surgical field, we are talking about the diagnostic field,
Yes.
mainly diagnostic. So when we do MDS, we have a field of medicine, OMR. Then we have a field of pathology. So these are two important fields which are directly. Third is prosthodontist. So these three fields are directly related to the surgical oncology field as well, because we rely on these people as well. So if first starting with the prosthodontist, for example, in almost 50 to 60% of your cases related to maxilla or any facial defect, we depend on prosthodontist, a good prosthodontist, for the good dentures or the good obturators or the good prosthesis. So they can, like in TMH, Tata Memorial Hospital, there is a separate department, dental department, where they deal with the only and only with the prosthesis only for the oncology patients. And only MDS people are working there. It's a really great experience to work there. You tend to learn a lot of things there. So this was about the prosthodontist. Now, second is about, if we talk about the medicine people, MDS, medicine, those people, they also have important role, because when the patient comes to the clinic, they don't directly come to the tertiary center commonly. Like they come with the toothache, or they come with some ulcerative lesion, which has to be diagnosed by the people who are sitting in the clinics. Like, so OMR has very important role during their curriculum only. They get a good exposure towards the such students, because even those students are also posted for the in oncology centers for their clinical experiences. So what they can do, that immediately after MDS, they can spend a good amount of time, like 1 or 2 months, in some tertiary center dealing with only oncology.
Okay.
Right. The third field is pathology. Pathology, again, very, very important, because we related to head and neck cancers, we sometimes face a great challenge, because the general pathologists are not that trained only into the head and neck pathology. So these are few things in which I don't know why we underestimate ourselves, but head and neck field belongs to us. We are the one who spend at least first 5 years during the BDS in just this region. Then after MDS, after BDS, 3 years again in this region. So who can be more specialized in head and neck than us? So if we read about this, then we can specialize also about this thing better. So this is the thing what people can do. And even after BDS, when the students decide that they are going to open their own clinics, and patients are going to come first to them in their general clinics. So during their curriculum only, they should go through this aspect, diagnostic aspect, very thoroughly, that how to diagnose, because they are not the one who are going to operate. Obviously, the patient is going to be referred, but as the first patient comes to them, they should be able to diagnose the patient properly, and then they can consult some surgeon who can help them out with that. So diagnostic part at their level is very, very important, and which is their domain only, which they have to do. Right now, also as a oncologist, I tend to meet many of the dentists. I go to their clinic, I meet them, and I conduct cancer awareness programs for them so that they can be aware, they can be the first person to catch the disease. And only then they can send it to us.
Exactly. I think that's very, very correctly said. And with the rat race of you just opening the clinic and just treating the patients, I think somewhere, as you mentioned it very correctly, BDS graduates, we tend to forget that we are not just treating the patient's complaint, but we should be good enough to diagnose the entire the oral cavity, and not just treating if there is a toothache and just treating that. So I think it's very, very important. So all your BDS graduates, if you're listening to this session, please see the importance of diagnosing not just the patient's complaint, but also examining the entire oral cavity, basically. So you should be able to examine the buccal mucosa, the palate, the tongue, everything, and not just the complaint with which the patient has come to you. So yes, at least make the patient aware of what is there inside their mouth. And if there is any kind of an ailment where you think that needs to be referred to the specialist, then please do so. So next, Dr. Priyanka, like we would like to know that I'm sure, as a head and neck oncologist, one can work as a consultant with various healthcare organizations. So how should one approach these healthcare organizations, whether it's a hospital or it's any kind of an institution, where they can get themselves attached as a consultant?
So one thing is that after coming out of the wrath of this fellowship, anyone would be grilled so much that they try to look for their path automatically. I mean, this happens because I will tell you one thing. When I will tell you my experience, what happened with me. As a maxillofacial surgeon, when I first went to the TMH for the observation, just to see how things work there and to experience there. I wanted a fellowship, but they said, no, we cannot give you. You are a fresher. So you have to do the observership there. When I entered there, I observed that I am lagging in too many points in the sense that maybe it's a curriculum, or maybe it's sort of training that we need to really go through if we are talking about head and neck. Sometimes what happens that we tend to remain just limited to the oral cavity. But if you talk about it's a head and neck surgery, we need to know bit by bit from the skull base to the clavicle, everything. So let it be anatomy, let it be the procedures. So even if it is not only dental students I'm talking about, even the ENT, they are also limited to nose, ear, and throat. So they are not aware of the oral cavity. So if we have to become a head and neck surgeon, we should be very well aware and very well trained through each and every procedure. Let it be the prosthesis placement or the TV placement, or let it say Rice tube insertion. For example, I'm saying from A to Z. Okay, then once you are done with your fellowship, you tend to, as I told you, you should approach the institutes. You should approach different. For a maxillofacial surgeon, still with the head and neck training, it's a little difficult because people are not that aware, though they are becoming very, that awakening has started right now that we should give recognition to this field as well. So you have to fight it out. You have to prove your worth. And how you will prove your worth in front of them? By showing your skills. That means if you are fellowship, you are trained thoroughly, your skills are refined, you will definitely get a place. Apply. So in the private hospitals, the system is that you can go through the HR and then or meet the head of the departments and then can apply in the departments for the post or something. And if you want to start your private practice, you have to develop your base. As I said that you have to see the hospital infrastructure and all those things to start your private practice, to be a consultant. So
Okay.
this is the way.
Yeah. So now when you said like one can practice this as a private practice also. So can this be practiced in a normal dental clinic, or do we need extra equipments, instruments, a team, as you said? So what are the requisites if one wants to start it as a private practice?
So private practice for a surgeon, I am particularly talking about the surgery.
Yes.
Practice needs a backup. When I say, okay, you have diagnosed a patient in your clinic, the diagnostic part, yes, you can tackle in clinic only. You have done the biopsy and all. Till the biopsy, it is okay. But when we are doing the surgical planning, keep one thing in mind, that choose a hospital where you have a strong ICU team, you have a good ICU backup, and then, okay, once the ICU thing is done, you should be aware of the centers, because the patient is not going to run here and there. He will ask you, Doctor Saab, मुझे बताइए radiation कहाँ से लेना है? Tell me where I am going to take the radiation or the chemotherapy. So you should be well aware that around your area where the good radiation oncologist is there, or whether in your center only, or where he or she, if requires, can get the chemotherapy, all these things. So if we talk about a dental setup only, I mean a clinic, yes, diagnostic part you can easily do from there. And then if you are trained enough to handle that, you can take the patient to a hospital or some good center institute, operate him or her, and then refer to the radiation and chemotherapy.
Okay, okay. And one can set up their own, like a small hospital or something. Can that also be done?
For surgical oncology, yes, small. I am not sure of the term small, because yes, you need a good, as again and again I'm saying, you need a good ICU,
Yes.
ventilator, if you have these things. So yes, the small procedures like biopsies or the dressings or these things can be done there, but not the major surgery. I would not advise that.
Okay. Okay. I think that's fair enough. So now, what is the future scope of this field now? I'm sure in tier one it is practice, but what about tier two and tier three cities? If somebody is belonging to these cities, can they practice in their hometown?
So when we are talking, you in India, we have such a situation that all these metropolitan cities and these big cities, so called, they are totally saturated. As more and more people, more and more doctors or oncologists, they try to settle in these cities so that they will get everything good institute and all. And what happened? The patients from these small villages, small towns, like from a rural part of UP or Bihar or MP, they will try to go to these places, these centers. And what happens? Their relatives, the patient, they are just dragged enough, financially not capable. In TMS, you see long queues of patient and long waiting lists. But if some oncologist decides, yes, I'm going to practice in my hometown or in that small town where patients are really troubled enough, they have to travel so far to get the right kind of treatment. It will be so nice. It will be so good that some trained person is ready to do that. So yes, this decision of going to tier 2 or tier 3 cities should be taken and will be a good perspective for any of the oncologists. With yes, but for that they should develop some setup which will be favorable to them. It should not happen that they will start somewhere where they do not have, as I said, ICU backup or anything, and they will land up in trouble. But it is really good initiative.
So yes, absolutely correct. And I think this is, as you said, tier one is already, we already have these kind of specialists in these cities, and I think it's the right time to now move to tier two and tier three and give specialized kind of treatment, because we see these kind of cancers also, they're not much prevalent, or they're not just prevalent in the urban cities, but I think in the rural part of India also, they're very much prevalent.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, head and neck cancer is the commonest one, especially oral cancer is the commonest cancer which is in India. And we say that MDS people are mushrooming, these people are mushrooming. Yes, if they are mushrooming, okay, we are the experienced one. Go to the places, go to your hometown, go to rural places, treat those people because you are required there, right? So this thing is,
I think
should be taken.
yes, absolutely correct. So I think the future of dentistry is where you move to tier two, tier three cities, and then provide this kind of specialized treatment to people who actually need it, and they're traveling, way across to big cities to avail these kind of services. So why to make them travel and give them a unnecessary financial burden on them? So make sure that this kind of specialty, if you want to get into head and neck oncology, it can be highly practiced in tier 2 and tier 3 cities as well. So now, what are the opportunities abroad if one wants to work in this field? Can someone do a MDS program from here and then a fellowship from India? And can they practice head and neck oncology outside India?
So if we talk about the Western world, no, we cannot, because we need to go through again the CLAD or the whatever the NAT boards and all these. For as a matter of fact, for anyone, let it be for MS person or for MDS, even in Western world, they have their own system for medical education. So we have to again start from the beginning. But yes, in Central Asian countries like Mauritius, Fiji, or African countries, we can practice there. After the fellowship from India, it is well recognized there. We can go and practice there.
Okay, I think that's fair enough. So now, since you've been working in this area for quite a long period of time, then now what do you think are the pros and cons of this field?
So, if we talk about the pros of this field, one thing is that the tech. See, as I told you, our background belongs to the same area. So we are well aware. Getting trained in this is not difficult if you are dedicated. If you have decided, yes, I have to seriously go ahead with this thing, you can take it for sure. You can, because see, we use laser during our some things like some techniques, laser techniques, some surgical techniques. We are very well aware with all these techniques. So the pro is that we don't have to get into something which is totally new for us. We can master the surgical techniques. We can just on the basis of our training, basic training, we can go ahead with the other further surgical training as well. And the cons is it's a technical field which demands more of your time. You have to be patient. Like if you say that I have done now MDS, within 1 month I want to become an oncologist and I will do everything whatever I want to. No, that is not possible. As a matter of fact, for anyone, not for us only, for anyone. And we being from a background where we are not that exposed to the general body or the general surgical techniques that much, yes, we need little bit more time to get trained into the whole of the head and neck surgical part. To call ourselves a surgical oncologist, yes, we need to rigorously train for that, and for which we need little time and we have to be little patient. So you say 1 or 2 years is not that big time gap, if we say that. So pros and cons, if I say, yes. But if we talk about pros, you really feel confident enough that your field has widened. You can explore into the reconstructive part. You can explore many of maxillofacial surgeons are doing such beautiful reconstructive surgeries, microvascular I'm talking about. And there are so many good surgeons from our background in the same field. So we have a vast field to explore if you are dedicated enough. That's the only thing I have to say about this.
I think that's amazing. So all you, BDS and MDS students, if you're listening to this session, then as Dr. Priyanka correctly said, there is a proper process to get trained into this particular field, because this is not just a simple specialization field, it is a super specialization. So you need to put in that amount of hard work, and you need to give time, and you need to be very, very patient with this field if you really want to get into this field. So now, what are the new advancements or new developments happening in this field of head and neck oncology that one should be aware of if they want to get into this field?
So, as we know, medical field as such is a field of advancement. If you are really well aware of the recent advancements, you can go ahead. You can really excel in your field. In surgical oncology, the same thing applies. We have the talk of the town is robotic surgery. So something we call as TORS, transoral robotic surgeries. Though not all the hospitals, but many of the institutes have robots now. For that, you need to get trained into that. As a matter of fact, for any of the advancement surgeries, you need a training for this also. Many of the centers have now started providing training for the robotics. Second is TOLS, which is transoral laser surgeries. During our curriculum also, we do procedures using lasers like CO2 lasers, we do leukoplakic excisions, etc., etc. So same thing we use for oncology also many a times. So for laser excisions, for laryngeal excisions, for chordectomies and all that, we use this laser. And something which is new is TOWS. TOWS is transoral ultrasonic surgeries, which is very latest thing. You use ultrasonic scalpels to cut the lesions which are deep inside base tongue or something in the larynx or pharynx. So these are the few advancements in the field. Rest, the basic fundamentals of the surgery remain same. Even if these new things come and new advancements come, the first and important thing is that, sometimes people believe in putting the name, some titles in front of their names, like experience in this, robotic surgeon, and this surgeon, and that surgeon. But the thing is, whether you are well trained into the fundamentals and basic surgery or not, that is very important. I mean, okay, it looks fancy to add these things in the name, but first and important thing is get train and get experience in the basic and conventional modality of the surgery, and then yes, always you can learn any of the new thing, that is always welcome, but get trained into the basic conventional surgery and then step into this, as I mentioned, robotic, lasers, ultrasonics, all these things.
I think that's a very good point that you have made. In the race of becoming unique or doing something extra or just showcasing certain things, we tend to forget the foundational, education that is required. And I think all these advancements happen on the conventional education that we have, on the base that we have. So I think that needs to be very, very perfect before one starts with the new advancements or technologies that are there in the field. So lastly, we would like to know, your last tip or advice that you would like to give to the dental graduates who would like to get into this field of head and neck oncology.
So I would only say that if oral cavity belongs to you, then why to give treatment to someone else? I mean, then treatment also belongs to you. So just go ahead, master the field, and conquer the world. Nothing else. Nothing can stop you. If someone says that world is saturated, we cannot do, there is there is this, that. Every moment, every time you have something to excel in your life, you can just outshine any of the conditions or any of the things, any of the worst conditions. So just do whatever you are doing, do it thoroughly. Whatever you are reading, what you are studying in your BDS course or in your MDS, then you can do anything, I'm sure. Keep your fundamentals and basics very clear and very strong. Then no one can beat you.
I think that's a very, very good tip and a good advice that you have given. So all you dental graduates, make sure that your basis or your base education is absolutely strong. And if you want to pursue this field, then you can definitely get into the fellowship program and make sure that you have a good hands-on experience, you have good observation, and you have good experience and good exposure, of course, from a good institution. So thank you so very much, Dr. Priyanka, for sharing all the insights on this field, because this is a very, very super specialized field. We don't see much of head and neck oncologists in our country as of now, and so it's a great it's an honor to have you on our platform and talk about this field after MDS. So thank you very much for sharing all the insights once again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shireen. And it's a really nice experience to share your views, your ideas with the newcomers. And it's always a great opportunity to share your knowledge with the younger ones. Thank you very much.
All you audience, if you have been patiently listening to us today, thank you very much for listening to our session. Make sure that you have these pointers written down. I will also keep the timestamp in the video description, so you can check it out if you want to see just a section of the video. So thank you very much, everyone. And before I sign off, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And please share this, because this might help out somebody who really wants to get into this field. So thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye and good luck.